Good evening, everybody. My name is Bonnie Gardner. I am the campus director for Willis College, Ottawa, online, and my privilege to be the campus director for our Winnipeg campus. With me tonight, we have Laura Lee. Laura Lee is the Dean of Education for our Winnipeg campus. We have Brenna. Brenna is an instructor for our Professional Photography Diploma program. And we have a couple of really fabulously talented students that I'm excited to introduce you to as we move through the program. The events tonight will take about 30 minutes. Lots of time for questions and answers as we move through the presentation. Towards the end of the presentation, Brenna is going to teach us a little bit about how to use the device we all carry with us all day long as a fabulous camera. I'm very excited to learn about that. Laura Lee, could I have you share your screen with us, please? Beautiful. All right, so we are going to talk tonight about the Professional Photography Diploma program. Such a great program. Super excited to share this with you all. And you might have to move slides, Laura Lee, because it's
Sorry.
your screen share. No problem. So Willis College Professional Photography Diploma program is one of the most comprehensive photography programs available. We offer hands-on, practical skills to enable graduates to stand out in the photography industry. We teach the art, science, and business of photography in our state-of-the-art facility where discovery and creativity are celebrated. The program is an excellent fit for an individual who is passionate about the art of photography, a person who enjoys working with people, someone who is interested in running their own business and setting their own hours, and a person who is looking for a career that is both fulfilling professionally and personally. Career opportunities. There are so many career opportunities. Wedding and lifestyle photographer, and we heard that Brenna and Randy both really like that. Commercial photographer, architect, product, food, real estate. Travel photographer, photojournalist, stock photographer, sports, nature and wildlife, fashion, fine art, and scientific. So many different things. Have you ever thought about where all the pictures come from in some of the fabulous encyclopedias, etc., that we see? Those are professional photographers. What skills will I learn in the program? Upon completion of the program, our graduates will have perfected their ability to think critically and to see the world as an image maker. They will have the technical skills and creativity necessary to consistently create compelling photographs and meaningful portraits. They will have built a professional photography portfolio and will have launched their own website. Graduates will have all the tools necessary to start their career in photography industry. Laura Lee, I'm going to have you take it from here.
All right. So we'll get started with the admission requirements. So in order to apply for the professional photography program, you need to have completed grade 12 or a GED and be fluent in English, both oral and written. Now, if you don't have a high school diploma, you can always apply as a mature student, and we'll be very happy to help you with this. You'll need your official transcript and 10 recent assorted images of your choice. And we always get asked, can they be edited? Should they be this? They can actually be anything that you'd like us to see. And students most often really find that it's hard to narrow it down to 10. So it's not unusual for me to get a lot more than 10. How do I apply? So the first step in applying for the program is to meet with an admissions advisor, and we have some pretty amazing folks that you can speak to. They'll review the program entry requirements with you, and then they'll hand you over to a finance professional who will help you with your financing and your registration. And next thing you know, 8 months will have flown by and you'll be the next 8 months you'll spend training toward your new career.
Thank you. So we're going to introduce some really fabulous students that we have with us tonight. We have Randy. Randy is an online student from the Willis College Photography program, and we have Chad. And Chad, if I remember correctly, you were an in-person student. So it'll be really interesting to get two different aspects of how the program works. Laura Lee, do you have any questions that you might want to ask Randy?
I do actually. So just quickly, Randy, first off, why did you end up choosing Willis College to study photography?
I chose Willis because it is like the place to go for photography. It was formerly known as Prairie View, which is photography. Anybody who is a photographer goes to Willis or Prairie View. Yeah, I had some family who went. I knew some friends who did just their night classes, and then I had a cousin who did the diploma program and loved it. And yeah, it was just like it was a no-brainer.
Awesome. Well, we were very happy when you joined us. Randy actually had a little tiny creature that joined her every day because she studied from home, and his name was Gus, and he was a tiny little hamster.
Aww.
Yeah. So having said that, Randy, you attended classes online. Did you find this to be a positive experience, and why?
Yeah, I definitely did. There were definitely challenges with learning online, but there is everywhere. I'm definitely like a homebody and an introvert. So being at home and like rolling out of bed 10 minutes before class and like grabbing a coffee and just sitting in my little office was like perfect for me. And I definitely didn't find it like more challenging to be online. If anything, I feel like I got more help being online than in person. We had like one-on-ones with teachers constantly. And yeah, and I feel like I did my assignments quicker. Like if I had to commute to school and commute back, knowing myself, there's no way I would have got my assignments done. But I mean, I was at home all day. So the second classes were done, I did my assignments and I was usually done and submitted by supper. And yeah, I loved being online. I definitely think it was a positive experience, and I would do online like again tomorrow for sure.
For our guests, if any of you have a question for Randy or indeed for Chad, who we're going to speak to right away, please feel free to type it into either of the two areas you'll see in your Zoom. You'll see a Q&A or a chat. Either one, we'll be able to see your question and we'll be happy to ask Randy, Chad, or Laura Lee, in fact, any questions that you might have. Laura Lee, what about Chad? What did he come to school in person?
Yeah, Chad actually attended in person. Chad is kind of and he was an interesting student right from the start. So when I first met Chad, actually, I'll give you a little bit of background. We chatted early on in the spring of last year, and Chad is actually a full-time paramedic. He works 4 days on, 4 days off, nights actually. And when him and I chatted, I won't lie, I was a little bit anxious about how it was all going to work. I didn't want to make him any promises that I didn't feel that we would be able to keep. Talking to him, he definitely seemed confident that he could do it. He actually, if I remember correctly, looked at his schedule months in advance to see how his shifts would sort of fall throughout the year. And anyway, he managed to do it. He was actually in the top of our class. He was our valedictorian. So just a question, Chad, for you. Before we get into your work schedule, what kind of student support did you feel that you received during your time here at Willis?
Yeah, well, I mean, the instructors were incredibly helpful. I tend to ask a lot of questions and they were always available, either by email or in person. And of course, the college was very accommodating. I mean, coming off of nights, I would be sometimes late. And so it was hugely, it was just really nice that they were so accommodating. And yeah, I mean, everybody's available to help. So if you are like me and you have tons of questions and you just, have a desire to learn, they're willing to help, which is great.
Awesome.
So as we said, you attended classes on campus while you were working full-time nights. How did you manage to balance your studies with your work schedule?
Well, it was difficult. I banked a lot of overtime earlier in the year, and I used vacation days to book off all my day shifts. And during nights, I just make it work. So I'd do my assignments whenever I had the chance. So sometimes I'd be driving around in the passenger seat doing assignments. Sometimes I just asked my paramedic partner. I harassed her a lot for pictures. She was my model often, and she was pretty sick of it by the end. But yeah, I mean, I just made it work. I'm just that kind of person. I can make it work, and I'm driven to make it work. So if you do work a full-time job, it is certainly possible, but you know, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than if you had the entire 8 months off.
Hmm. Thank
So
you, Chad. That's amazing. I can't imagine doing full-time school and night shifts. It's hard enough right now to do full-time work. So I applaud your dedication to the program.
Thank you.
Very excited that Celine just joined us. Thank you, Celine. I know you had some technical difficulties getting on, but I'm super glad that you're here with us tonight. I heard that Celine attended campus, but she's a mom of three children. Is that right, Laurelie?
it's absolutely right.
Wow,
Yeah.
that actually sounds maybe comparable to Chad
Chad.
working night shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably. I mean, more so.
Mhm.
Celine, how did you manage?
With the help of everybody around me, I had a pretty good system when it came to handling the children at home, aka my sister and my mom, who pretty much had to bear all the burden. And when it came to school, I pretty much had the support, if not just from my fellow classmate, but the teachers, Laurelie as well. So everybody there at Willis pretty much had each other's back. So that's really what made it possible.
Oh, that's awesome, Celine. I love to hear that. Earlier this evening, I asked Chad and Randy and Brenna what type of pictures they like to take. What do you like to take pictures of, Celine?
I love portraits. Um,
Oh,
I knew that going into Willis College, but throughout the course, I was able to reinforce that. I wasn't too sure before, but I love portraitures. I learned how to take different forms of portraitures. I was really more into fashion before. By coming to Willis, I was able to explore different things. Right now, I'm more into the artistic side of portraitures, which is more low key, high key lighting, trying to play with different genres. So that is something I think if I had not come to the college, I would not have gone into.
nice. What was your favorite thing, Chad? What was the favorite course or the favorite item?
Um, I loved all of it. I mean, I think film was definitely a standout. Using film cameras, developing film, it was it was just so much fun. It's just such a, taking it back to the roots of photography. So that was really enjoyable. But I just loved, especially the creative imaging. I think that was a very challenging course, but I learned that I'm definitely a creative person. I didn't really realize it before, but I love the creative imaging. It just challenged me, and it was just fun. It's just fun. It was just always a challenge and always fun. So
Oh, that's
there you
awesome.
go. That's my favorite stuff.
Thank you. Randy, what about you? What was your favorite part of school, apart from getting to do it at home?
Yeah, true. I would have to probably agree with Chad on some of that. I really enjoyed film. Like it was really neat to take a step back and do film and shoot on film because it's so completely different than digital, and paying attention to like the actual shot you're taking, not just taking tens of thousands of shots and going through them later and deleting everything. You have to take the time to think and do it properly, and then to develop the film. It was just, yeah, it was easily my favorite part.
Awesome. And Celine, where do you come in on this? What was your favorite part?
Feel terrible, but contrary to both Randy and Chad, I came in thinking that film was going to be my favorite subject. Turns out to be my least favorite. So I appreciated just exploring that because it's always been something that I was fascinated with. So I tried it and I figured out that I'm really into the fast pace taking pictures, and I am not as patient as I thought I was. So going back to that, my favorite subject was image capture, because that was why I came to Willis College, was to know exactly how to use the camera itself.
Awesome. It's kind of like me going into sciences and discovering that I love biology and hated chemistry.
Yeah.
So Brenna, thank you so much for your patience. I would love to learn about smartphone now if you have some time to share with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
While you're changing screens, Brenna, I'm just going to let you know we do have a question that came in.
Okay.
So a question from Claire. I've never been involved in photography, but it's something I want to take as a hobby. Are you accommodating with first timers or should I be at a certain level? Oh, Claire. What do you think, Laura Lee? Can we take Claire?
Absolutely. The way our program is designed, we have students come in at all levels, to be perfectly honest. Beginners that are just unboxing their cameras on the very first day of school, students that have actually never touched a camera and have only been using their smartphone. Students like Celine, for example, who had some amazing photos that she submitted in her portfolio. Same with Randy and Chad, all the way, like I said, to people who have never ever used a camera. The very first part of the program, the first, say, 5 or 6 weeks, is really designed to get everybody from sort of the level they've walked in the door all to the same, sort of to level the playing field, all at the same level. Everybody has all of the basics that they need to move forward. The very beginning of the program, Brenna is actually very key to that. She's the image capture teacher, as we've all mentioned already. She's the one who gets to watch those cameras come out of the boxes. She gets the one that gets to tell you where all the buttons go. Well, if their batteries are even charged at the very beginning, I think. But definitely the program accommodates all different levels coming in for sure. And at the end, you have this amazing portfolio that you'd be more than proud to share with everyone.
Thank you, Laura Lee. Claire, I really hope that helped.
If you don't mind me popping in for a minute, I did do it initially as a hobby as well, and I kind of thought I would just, just do it for fun because it's a passion of mine. And I actually never bought a camera until the summer before the course. So yeah, it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible.
Oh, thank you, Chad. That was amazing. All right, so Laura Lee, can you tell us a little bit about the talented Brenna?
I would love to tell you a little bit about the talented Brenna. So Brenna Ferris actually graduated from Willis College's Professional Photography program back in 2017 when we were still known as Prairie View School of Photography. She came here after already earning a biology degree from the University of Winnipeg. And in the years since, she's gone on to run a very successful wedding and lifestyle photography business, while also being the lead photographer or lead instructor here in the professional photography program. Brenna was born and raised in the heart of the prairies. She's been documenting the world around her since a very young age. She has very fond memories of toting around her first little film camera, Celine, that's how Brenna learned, there you go, and many more after it. Her passion for documenting her passion for documenting the world around her has never left. She loves to capture the details, natural light, and genuine organic moments from the everyday to special days and everything in between. And more importantly for us here at Willis, she loves to share her knowledge and passion for photography with the new students each year. A few of Brenna's favorite things include a fresh pot of coffee, Thai food, nature documentaries, working in the darkroom, of course, and her dogs, Bowie, her little miniature dachshund, and Scout, her golden retriever.
Oh, I love that you have dogs, Brenna. I'm a huge dog fan. Thank you. I'm excited to hear all about using the smartphone for photography. Thank you, Brenna.
Yeah, excellent. So everyone has a phone, I would assume in this day and age. And I think it really comes back to just the whole idea of documenting. You don't have to have a fancy camera to be taking great photos. Phones have come really a long way. So I just wanted to give everyone 3 kind of quick and easy tips that you can use just to drastically improve the photos that you're taking with your phone already. So again, maybe you're thinking this is a hobby, you're not sure if you want to get into photography. Start with your phone, see how it goes, and then you can always decide to upgrade and purchase a professional level camera after that. All right, Laura Lee, next slide, please. Perfect. So the first tip I'm going to give you is composition. Composition is key. And this just comes down to the way that we frame up a photograph and the elements we decide we want to keep in the frame, as well as the elements we want to keep out of the frame. So maybe some of those distractions, things that aren't going to look as nice in the background. And composition is going to help us to create stronger, more dynamic photos. At the end of the day, we want people to spend more time looking at our photos. We want people to like our images, and that's all really going to boil down to composition. So the three main things I'm going to cover for composition tonight are avoiding collisions, the rule of thirds, and your viewpoint. So we'll go to next slide, Laura Lee. Perfect. So a collision is something that's distracting in our background. So maybe it's a stop sign, maybe it's a green recycling bin, maybe it's a logo for a business in the background, something that we want to try to keep out of the frame. Another example of a collision is when we position someone in front of a tree and then it looks like they have antlers or there's a tree or a post growing straight out of the top of their head. The other big one that we tend to get in the prairies a lot is the horizon line slicing through someone's head. So even just changing the height, or again, the viewpoint that we're shooting from, can help us to eliminate that type of collision. Rule of thirds, again, my very favorite compositional rule, can really help us to change the photos that we're taking. So we want to avoid having a subject in the center of the frame. So on the right-hand side of this slide, we can see an example of a frame or a viewfinder divided with our third lines. And so the whole idea here is that we can place our subject to the left or to the right, to the top or to the bottom. So in a landscape, how is our photo going to look different if we place our horizon line at that lower line versus the upper line? In a portrait, we want to try to place our subject's eyes along that top third line. And then if we want to really switch things up, we can just try positioning a subject around one of those red circles where the two lines intersect. Perfect. So here's an example of a collision and coming down to changing our viewpoint. So from the image on the left, we can see that horizon line slicing right through their heads. It's kind of hard to unsee once you've seen it in an image versus the photo on the right. We've changed our viewpoint. So by lowering ourselves, we've completely shifted the composition. We've eliminated that collision, and we've got a really beautiful portrait. Perfect. So adding a grid on your phone is something that I would recommend doing. You can do this on an iPhone as well as any of the Android phones as well. So if you haven't, I would recommend taking some time just to set that up. All right, so we've got a couple examples of rule of thirds. So on the left here, we can see that we're using kind of an implied horizon line with the tops of the trees for that upper third line, because our foreground is very interesting. And then same thing over on the right-hand side, we've got a nice big reflection of the clouds there. We've placed the horizon line towards the upper third of the frame. With portraits, we want to think about whether we're shooting horizontally or vertically, placing our subject's eyes, or at least their head, towards the top third of the frame, just so that we include a little bit more of their body, a little bit more information about whatever scene we're shooting in. So the two portraits on the outside, we're using the top third rule, and then the one in the middle, we're using the bottom of the table as our rule of thirds. Perfect. So point number 2, it's going to be really important to get to know your smartphone if you haven't already. And there's a ton of online resources. So apart from what I'm going to talk you through tonight, just to make sure that you're getting the best that you can out of your phone. So most of us know how to change the focal length or the lens. So we can switch between wide or normal, maybe zoom in with a little bit of a telephoto. And this can be helpful to frame collisions out of the background, shift our composition, and then kind of decide how much we want to include in the frame. Then the second point here is brightness. It happens to me all the time if I'm outside and I maybe want to take a behind the scenes photo on my phone. If it's a really bright sunny day, if I take a normal photo, my subject is kind of in shadow and I can't see their face. So oftentimes I'll use brightness, which we'll see on the next slide in a second, just to bring the exposure up on my phone so that I can get a little bit more detail. Perfect. So again, coming down just to getting to know the settings that we have on various types of phones. We can do next slide, Laura Lee. Perfect. And then adjusting brightness. So on most phones, we're just going to tap the screen and then we have a slider to bring our exposure up or down. So if we have something in shadow, we're going to bring our exposure up. And if we have something that's maybe a little bit too bright, we can bring our exposure down. Okay, and then number 3, my last kind of big takeaway here is editing. If nothing else, we can be better than an Instagram filter. So we'll have a lot more control if we do a little bit of editing on our smartphone. So I would recommend doing some research and finding an app that works for you. My favorite is the Lightroom mobile app. So I use Lightroom when I'm editing photos for clients, and then I use Lightroom on my phone for anything that I'm doing that way. And all of the editing apps that you can access, most of them are going to give us options to kind of change our exposure. So we can make something brighter or darker. We can add contrast. We can change the color. We can crop in a lot of these editing apps as well. We can straighten a horizon line. Let's say you were standing half in a ditch and your photo was crooked. We can correct that horizon line with our editing tool here. So what we want to think about at the bottom of the slide here, so light, how bright or how dark do we want our photo to be? What do we want the colors to look like? Are we going to add an effect? Maybe it's black and white, maybe it's a preset. And then geometry is kind of adjusting our horizon line or maybe correcting for a really wide angle lens. So there's a couple different popular apps, like I mentioned. So Lightroom, and then we'll talk through some others. So this is some screenshots just from Lightroom, kind of walking you through editing a basic photo. So on the very far left, we have our original image. And then as we kind of progress through the different frames in the second column there, we can see our exposure. So we've brightened things up. It came out a little bit dark from the camera. We've added contrast just to give it a little bit more pop to make those colors stand out, make our darker tones a little bit darker. And then we pulled the highlights down a little bit so we could see some more detail in the Let's Party sign on the background there. Our third panel is adjusting our white balance. So if we want to make things look warmer or cooler, and then we are adjusting it just because, again, the photo came out a little bit crooked from the camera. So we're correcting that at the end. If you're like me, you probably hold your head a little bit towards the left. And so I find when I'm shooting, most of my things come out a little bit crooked and I've always got to fix them at the end. Perfect. So again, just kind of running us through some apps. I've got a couple of different examples here. On the left for every single one is the original photo, the way that it was taken in the camera. And then on the right is the edited version. So we've got the Lightroom mobile option here. Snapseed is another really great one. It has a lot of different kind of presets built into it. So you can get a lot of different effects. And then on the next slide, we've got Visco, VSCO, however you want to pronounce it. Same thing. So just another example of really finding a subject that was maybe a little bit too dark, a little bit underexposed, and we can brighten it back up with a little bit of our editing software here. And then photo editor is another good option there as well. So we're not doing anything crazy to any of these photos, but we're definitely improving them from what they looked like just straight out of the phone. Perfect. Get out there and practice. The best way to learn is to shoot and improve and just try new techniques.
Thank you so much, Brenna. That was amazing. Absolutely loved it. Does anyone have any questions that we might be able to ask Brenna about the tips for the smartphone?
Now that I've talked a mile a minute and given you guys a lot to think about.
It's a ton of information. It was really good. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
find one of my problems with my smartphone, it's an iPhone, is holding it steady. Do you have any tips for holding the phone so it doesn't, shake a little bit?
Yeah. I can't seem to turn my camera on, but what I would recommend doing is always holding your phone with 2 hands. So I kind of cross my fingers on the back and I keep one thumb on each side of the camera rather than holding it out with one hand, kind of like you're going to take a selfie. That's going to be really wobbly. So I try to hold it with 2 hands and then kind of lock my elbows and it'll be a little bit more steady.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm totally going to try that in Ottawa tonight. I don't think there are any more questions coming in. Laura Lee, do you have any questions for anyone tonight?
Chad, what was your favorite skill that you learned here?
My favorite skill?
Yeah, the one thing you didn't come in knowing. Well, I know you didn't come in knowing all that Brenna taught you, but what was the one sort of little aha, wow, look what I can do moment for you?
You know, I think it was Photoshop. Photoshop it's complicated but it's incredibly powerful. And learning Photoshop was, I mean, you can just do so much with it. It's just absolutely incredible. So I think the Photoshop would have to be the skill that I learned that it's just super beneficial.
Thank you, Chad.
And
We did have a question come in about whether or not the webinar might be shared after tonight's live viewing, and it absolutely will. That's why we're recording. We'll be able to send it out to any of our guests. And it will also be provided to Laura Lee to share with anyone who might be interested in taking our amazing professional photography program. So don't worry if you missed any key points, couldn't take some notes fast enough. We are going to send out a copy to everyone who attended.
perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bonnie.
No problem. Randy, what was the one skill you learned in the program that was your aha moment?
I feel like I don't have just one specific skill because I was also kind of in the boat of like I had my camera, but I didn't know a lot about it. I took pictures, but they were terrible. So definitely like being in Brenna's class and learning like what I'm doing with my camera was huge. But then also I think one of my biggest takeaways from being in the course and taking the diploma program and not just learning my camera off of YouTube or something was the connections I made. Still like talking to Laura Lee all the time, and I have second shot with most of the teachers over the past summer and getting those portfolio pieces, and even like my fellow classmates that I still talk to, that there's a couple of us who shoot weddings and are constantly talking to each other. If I wouldn't have came to school, I wouldn't have those huge connections that have like put my business forward. So yeah.
That's awesome. And as an online student, that speaks volumes for the community that you had in school, Randy. So thank you so much for sharing.
Just one second, Bonnie, before we go on. It's actually really funny because I'm sitting here right now and there are still we had our final creative imaging show just before the students left this year. And oddly enough, Chad and Celine's are on the wall still. And we've asked Chad already what his aha moment, but Celine, what was yours? Because I'm looking at your work and it's just, it blows me away that you shot that project in our studio. You'd never know.
Oh, there we go. So my moment came when I realized that photography could be used just to have fun. Up till then, like I was saying, I was taking fashion photography, pretty straightforward. You shoot what you see, even if it is from different perspectives. But when I started creating different things, I'll take a picture and like Chad said, working in Photoshop, that's a skill that I'm so grateful for, because that is what allows me to go beyond just taking a still image as is, but really creating something else out of it.
That's amazing. Laura Lee, we have a question that came in, and I think you're going to be the best person to answer this one for me. So Margaret asks that she's very curious about the online option for the full-time program and wants to know how you would opt in to virtual classes.
That's actually a really great question. So I'm asked all the time, what's the difference between online and on campus? Randy just was pretty upfront about her love of online learning. You know, the fact that you don't have to fight traffic every day, and you still get to be in class, you connect with your fellow students. For students that are not here on campus, you're going to log into Zoom every day. The program is full-time. It's Monday to Friday. It's Central Time, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. You're in class at 9. It's very dynamic. You're not necessarily in front of a computer screen all the time. All of these graduates can fully attest to that. Brenna might have you in a lecture for an hour. You're out shooting. You're bringing your images back. You're talking. The funny thing, I think, when we first went online that first year, talking to students afterwards, it really struck me that the level of bonding. I think for Chad and Celine, they were sitting in class. Both of them sat at the back of the room. They were looking at a row of heads in front of them. Randy was sitting at a computer screen on Zoom, just like we are, looking at her fellow classmates, their faces, the instructors' faces. You know, the teachers sometimes log out and leave Zoom up, and the students are still chatting. It's other than having to drive in, maybe ride the bus or however you're going to get to class, you're in the comfort of your home. You're out shooting in your neighborhood or in your local park or wherever it is that you're going to do your in-class assignments or your assignments. It's very much the same, except that you're not in this physical campus. I think the level of bonding is the same, you're in class the same hours. It's an intensive program. There's no doubt about it. Chad said that very clearly. You need to be organized. I think the experience is very similar on campus or off, but the difference is you actually don't have to leave your home.
So Laura Lee, if I understand correctly, online is 9 to 4 Central Time, Monday to Friday. I could be in lecture for an hour and then get to leave the house, go to the park, take pictures, come back, be in another lecture, get to show my pictures, get to talk about what I saw. And I do that for 5 days every week.
Every week. So Monday you might have Brenna teaching you image capture. Tuesday you might have the amazingly talented Casey teaching you digital techniques, which is Lightroom and Photoshop. You might have Mary Margaret on Wednesday taking you out on field trips, or in the exchange, Mary Margaret teaches the creative imaging this year. Again, you might be doing scavenger hunts, photo scavenger hunts. You're not necessarily sitting in front of your computer for those 6 hours. By no means is that the way it goes. In the digital techniques class, you might be a little more because you're actually editing, but for the most part, this program is probably, I don't know, Brenna could probably correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would say it's like 75% at least practical. Hey, Brenna?
Yeah, there's a lot of practical. I was going to say, I can almost guarantee you in my class, you'll be shooting every single day. And then we'll have the opportunity to come back and get a little bit of feedback and see how it went. And then maybe even try it again if there maybe was something that didn't quite click that first time. No pun intended.
Oh, thank you, Brenna. Margaret, I really hope that helped answer your question. Please know that we'd be more than happy to have further conversation if you have any other questions. I know that Laura Lee and Brenna, Brandy as well, would be more than happy to chat with you. We do have access to your email from attending the webinar, so we can absolutely send out some information as well. And Margaret says, thank you very much. If there are no more questions, Claire, do you have any other questions that you might have for us? I know you're having some technical issues, but if you're able to hear us, we're here to help. Otherwise, I will say thank you so much to everyone for giving up your time tonight, for attending, for giving us such a fabulous insight into the photography program. Very excited. And I wish everyone a safe and fabulous evening.